The function of orgasm, if you want to speak about it from the spiritual perspective, just by looking at what happens in your consciousness in the moment of orgasm. So if you take a moment, and you go into that extraordinary intensity in the moment when you have an orgasm, what's going on in your consciousness in that moment? You'll see it's a very particular state. It's unlike anything else you normally experience in your consciousness. Either when you meditate, either when you do usual stuff, day-to-day stuff. It's none of that. This state can be described in many ways, but basically, from the spiritual perspective, what happens in that moment is like a complete silencing of the mind, or almost a complete silencing of the mind, and a tremendous opening of our being into something unknown and super great. That energy comes, and then it's like you don't know who you are anymore. And it doesn't even matter, And there's a lot of ecstasy and there's a lot of pleasure, but beyond this, there's a very profound shift in consciousness. This particular shift in consciousness is what's the key to transforming an orgasmic experience into a spiritual experience. That moment contains within it the possibility of setting yourself completely free from anything that you're hooking onto in your consciousness, in your mind, in your identity, Having a completely new experience of what it is to be alive. Because the orgasm is that. It's a very particular way of being alive. You feel more alive and more extraordinary than at any other time. And you feel you're much more than anything. And at the same time, the old you is nowhere to be found in that moment. You cannot relate to the standard image you have about yourself or your self-definition or self-understanding. None of that matters anymore in the moment of orgasm. It's all left aside. This is the function of orgasm. It takes us there, and it's described as a gateway into a higher state of consciousness. Now, it doesn't happen very often that we go in higher states of consciousness when we orgasm for two reasons. First of all, the orgasm is too short. We don't have time. It's like this extraordinary, there's like this extraordinary portal to a completely different realm of consciousness than the one we're normally staying with or staying at. And then we're just taking one step inside a new realm, but then we're pulled back because that's it. It was too brief to maintain, right? This is why tantrics came and said, look, we need to find a way to improve this state, to extend this state, to make it longer, to make sure we cross that threshold and we stay there, and the consciousness has enough time to expand and to discover everything that is to be discovered there in that new condition of being. This is one of the aspects. It's too short. The other aspect that can happen and that can prevent us from actually going into this state and experiencing much more of it is the fact that we're not paying attention to it. In that moment, when that intensity comes, when that extraordinary experience appears within us, we're simply not there. We're not conscious. We're not paying attention to what's going on. We're not looking at the consciousness. We're not looking at what exactly can happen. We're just staying with, let's say, if you want, the feelings, the sensations. It's nice, it's pleasant. It floods our being, or it makes us feel ecstatic. But we're not paying attention to the state of consciousness in that moment and to the direction our consciousness has. And we can have extraordinary, beautiful states, very intense, very pleasant, but it doesn't necessarily take us higher. It's just like you're having a very good meal and that it's very delicious, and that's that. After you've done it, it's not a particular transformation of the consciousness that you experience. The whole point with erotic amorous continence is to bring this experience to a level where you can both extend the duration of it and go into it fully consciously. And for this, there's a lot of preparation beforehand. But when doing this on a constant basis, yeah, you're preparing yourself, you're making sure you're capable of holding that experience in your awareness, and you're very lucid and you're very awake in it, and at the same time you manage to make it extend a bit longer. When this happens, you'll get into these states of consciousness which are very particular. And they will ripple in your being very profoundly. You can have orgasms that completely transform your understanding of life, completely transform the understanding of yourself, completely have you discover a completely new identity, like a deeper identity of your being, a deeper possibility or a greater potential inside to understand things, to do things, to love, to expand, to embrace in consciousness far more aspects than before, far more realities than before. There's this comparison in Tantra, for instance, that you often encounter, that if you learn to manage an orgasmic experience in a hyper-conscious way, in a perfectly tantric manner, then you can experience states of enlightenment. Yeah, you can experience extraordinary realizations, which otherwise you'd have to work much more for, in terms of doing the usual spiritual practice, meditating, doing hatha yoga, doing a lot of other techniques and methods and efforts to attain something, to attain a slightly higher degree of consciousness, a slightly higher awareness, a slightly higher understanding of things. It's a kind of a center, it's a kind of a key in Tantra, this experience, precisely because it creates this tremendous impact on consciousness, which can happen very quickly, compared to having years and years of experience, to have finally that state of freedom of consciousness, to come out of yourself and feel expanded and feel like you're one with everything. You feel like you're one with your beloved. You feel like you're one with the environment around you, one with the world. Yeah? It takes a lot. If you look at all these monks who are trying in monasteries and caves, they need a lot of efforts. They need a lot of sacrifices to get there. And it takes years of practice. But then you also have this absolutely extraordinary experience that was given to us, the experience of orgasm, that can take us there. And at the beginning, it's just a little taster of it. Just a tiny little taster. Even in the ejaculatory orgasm, it's a tiny little taster of it. But it's so extraordinary that we want to come back to it again and again and again and again. This is the reason why we like making love so much. It's because of this moment of extraordinary freedom, extraordinary consciousness, that lasts for just a few seconds, but it feels like this is what we've always wanted, isn't it? In that moment of orgasm, it feels like you're fulfilled, finally. It's there, it's all your tensions, all your contradictions, everything, all the burdens. None of that is there anymore, yeah? And that's because there's a transformation in the consciousness in the moment of orgasm. And we want to extend that. And we want to go into it consciously, to be able to repeat such experiences, yeah, without experiencing the draining effects, like when you're, ejaculating, without, having the frustration of being there for just a split of a second and then being drawn back. You want to stay there. You want to go into it and stay there. So this is, from a spiritual perspective, the function of the orgasm, from my point of view.
I can add just briefly. So as a kind of stairway to reach to these elevated states that Radu described, which are the goal, that's where we are going, the orgasm has a particular effect, a liberating effect also on our energy structure, starting from pranamaya kosha and further. This state of kind of rigid conditioning of pranamaya kosha and of the other subtle structure is loosened. And whatever imprint you would leave on pranamaya kosha in the moment of orgasm, it will leave a very big imprint. So I would take sometimes for a very long time, together with my lover, every orgasm to bring, we orgasm together, we bring for the awakening of the soul. Orgasm 10, 20, 30 times in the lovemaking, and then you feel for weeks after that. And if you make love very frequently, the soul is just burning. Yeah? Or you take it all to the crown. And the regular blockages that don't allow the energy to flow freely, that don't allow the energy to rise, they are suspended in the moment, depending on the intensity of the orgasm. Yeah? But the limitations of consciousness, as Radu described, and the limitations of energy, they are both loosened in that moment. And any imprint that you would leave, it's like this soft clay, or like soft concrete that you can just leave your hand there. Instead of having a hard concrete in your energy structure and in consciousness, as Radu described, everything becomes malleable to intention. Yeah? So you should be attentive. If you get depleted from time to time in a moment of orgasm, you should be attentive what is the seed of consciousness that you put. Maybe you are not attentive to your body. Maybe you are not attentive to your energy structure. And then all that energy, it doesn't have a center, a seed to polarize it. And therefore, there is a feeling of a kind of depletion. So that energy, you can even direct it to Muladhara when you are depleted. You orgasm on Muladhara, you have a very intense vitality, and so forth. So if you can already orgasm, you can direct it in this way, going step by step with the energy, and gradually getting to know the orgasmic experiences, consciousness, you can reach higher realities that Radu described. What you saw now is an extract from a wide course of teaching men the tantric way of lovemaking, the tantric path of love. It's called amorous, erotic continence. We have about 50 courses with different titles, and if you're interested, that's something you want to know more of, you're welcome to send us an email and connect with us in this way.